Pregame.tv, NFL Week 1, Detroit Lions 4-12 last year, looking for a bounce-back season, hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings made the playoffs last year, and what's this? The Lions open -3 and even -3.5, popping up as we speak. Bryan Leonard, what is going on? Why all the money for Detroit?
Well, you see a lot of regression. You take a look at the yardage totals for Detroit and everything, and some of the injuries they had, they would be a team on the uprise. And Minnesota, for the same reason, people would think would go backwards a little bit. And I made the line 3, so it's basically where I thought it was. But I know that you like this play. I've got some thoughts on it, but let me hear some of your reasons why you like it.
Yeah, let me give a couple thoughts for why the Lions are going to win this game. Last year, the Vikings swept the Lions. And one of the games they won was early in the season. Detroit was 1-2, really needed the game. They're hosting Minnesota. Percy Harvin runs a kickback. Another one of the Vikings runs a kickback. They get crushed on the stats, but yet the Vikings win the game 20-13. So they get the win, get the revenge game back in Minnesota later in the year. And Detroit's actually laying 3 in Minnesota, and this is like November-ish. And Minnesota outplays them, beats them, I think, 34-24. And it wasn't a phony win. It was that one was the real win. The first game was the phony win. But I can see that the fact that the market's still at Detroit laying 3 at Minnesota, that it's almost like everything broke right for Minnesota. Who knows what Adrian Peterson is on, the way he ran. But the bottom line is, you kind of expect that the Vikings are going to head back down to 7-9. The Lions are going to go up to 7-9 or 8-8. But the intangibles of this game, having been swept last year, and they might even view this game as the object of their destruction last year, where they went downhill completely. I've got a feel with the wide receivers probably healthy again, not just relying on Megatron, that I do think the Lions are going to be the better team this year. And 3, I do think does look cheap upon. But it's interesting, I didn't feel that way like a month and a half ago. But having done my work now, I do feel that way, and the market's certainly agreeing with that.
I actually had a friend who came out right after the Lions came out, and he goes, "There's your best bet for week number 1." He had Detroit. Well, you talked about the first time they played, Minnesota had 2 kick return touchdowns.
One punt return, one kickoff return.
Well,
yeah.
One of the things, and you touched on this, you said, well, they were dominated in the stats. Well, a lot of reasons they were dominated in the stats because they had 2 less offensive possessions. So that's a mistake a lot of people make when they take a look at the stats. They'll say, well, they had an interception return for a touchdown. They had this and they had that. Well, you've got to take those out of the way.
They're playing very conservatively with the lead.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just saying that those are 3 offensive possessions. The quarterback didn't even get behind the line of scrimmage, so you're eliminating all those stats. I do have some concerns about Detroit, and the last 4 years they've only beaten the Vikings 1 time, and they covered a game by 3, I believe. They were laying 4. They won by 7. And I talked about the yardage. Last year, Detroit out.
One of those years they were 0-16, though.
Who was that?
Detroit. So they didn't beat anybody that year.
All right. Well, I'm talking about against the spread.
Okay.
That's really all I care about is the sports better.
And that's all you really should care about.
Yeah, really. But Detroit last year, they held a 409 to 341 total yardage advantage. And a lot of people look at that and say, well, there'll be some regression. But keep in mind, Detroit was behind in a lot of these games. They're a team that moves the ball by the pass. So you're going to have a lot of garbage passing yardage when you take a look at that. So there will be some regression, but keep in mind this is a passing team that was behind a lot last year.
They had a Bears game, they were down 13-0, and they just went ahead and dinked and dunked down the field, got a score, I guess stopped in the red zone, same thing, and they got like 150 garbage yards in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you see that a lot. That's why a lot of teams that end up losing the games out-yard the opposition. But on the other side, Minnesota last year, they were actually outgained 349 to 336. But keep in mind, Minnesota is a team who runs the ball. And if you're a team that runs the ball, you're going to be out-yarded a lot of times.
Why would you even ponder passing when you got Adrian Peterson?
Why would you even pass when you have Ponder? And that's the problem they have, is they were able to have so much success. That was amazing to me, is how they had so much success without any passing game whatsoever. One thing that's good for the Detroit situation, Minnesota's only 4. I break down how teams perform against divisional rivals and against non-divisional rivals. Minnesota is only 4-8 against the spread the last 4 seasons on the divisional road. The bad part is 3 of those 4 times they've covered was in Detroit.
Against our friend, the Lions. And of course, one thing I'm going against my, fade the loser city. You know this theory, right?
Well, in my lifetime being from Cleveland, you've made a lot of money against mine.
No question. Yeah. I take the city that no free agent in his right mind would want to live in, all right? That would be Cleveland, Detroit, St. Louis, stop me here if I hit anyone, Kansas City.
Not for baseball. St. Louis.
Not for baseball. This is football. Jacksonville. You could make a case, okay, Jacksonville's Florida, but it's bad Florida by comparison to Tampa or Miami. And, based upon that, San Diego should win the Super Bowl each and every year. But there are a lot of taxes in San Diego. And you look at all these undesirable cities that you would not want to live in, Buffalo, and they suck every year. And I think part of that, when they try to get a free agent, they have to pay through the nose to get them. And I really feel strongly about that.
I hate to say this because he's not here, but Marco's from Pittsburgh. What's the exception for Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh's actually got some nice places to live. It's got character, and it's got, similar to Green Bay, it's got tradition. It's a very, very well-run organization. So I think that people see that. Same with Indianapolis. And although the city may not be very desirable compared to some other spots, the winning organization really helps. And you look at Green Bay, the great fans. And you got to remember, Green Bay, Minnesota, people say, I don't want to live there. But you got these big old uglies, that they like. I mean, they're 340 pounds, and they don't want to go clubbing. They want to go hunting and fishing and, late in the year and ice fishing in Minnesota, and that's perfect for them to go ahead and do. And so it's not a surprise that you see Minnesota always running the ball well because they got all the road graders that want to play for them. Yeah,
I think a lot of it comes down to basically the entire organization. Your good organizations find ways to win every year. Take a look at New England. Obviously, Belichick's a great coach, but you take a look at that team. They never draft high. They sign a lot of free agents. They bring a lot of guys into camp, and a lot of these guys that were cast-offs for other teams always seem to play well for New England. It's just an organizational stunt.
Right, and every now and then you see a bizarre situation happen, like the Cincinnati Bengals, a terrible organization, and I think someone got lucky with Dalton, that he's turned out better than they expected. They got A.J. Green, and things kind of have gelled for them correctly, but it's almost like an organization like that has to get lucky in some of their picks, and then they'll have two to 3 year window of success, but they'll be back. I'm confident 5 years from now the Bengals will be the same lovable losers that we've seen forever. Would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't. My thought process is your organization is here, and if you've got a lower class organization, you've got to do more things right than a team from a very good organization. They don't have to do as many things right.
Yeah, just like Belichick could completely be out of line with a player in a meeting or do something, but the player's more likely to accept it rather than rebel against it, saying, well, it's Belichick, he must be okay.
And the people they bring in there, they bring in quality people. I mean, you talked about
for the most part.
For the most part. Yeah, that's a bad example. But for the most part, your Oakland Raiders, and I liked Oakland as a kid, and your Cincinnati Bengals, and those kind of organizations don't bring in the higher class guys. I don't want to offend anybody, but history says if you're Pac-Man Jones, your choices of going to certain teams are, and you've got your 5 teams.
Never convicted of a felony. Never convicted. So very good. Well, okay, if I make Detroit
Does that mean OJ is going to be on?
Let's not go. By the way, I'm going to say this because we had the high-profile case with I totally forgot who was the Zimmerman case. I heard that 2 of the jurors were going to find him guilty of manslaughter, and then they wound up. The jury came to agreement and said, not guilty. But I mean, who really knows what happened? But I have to tell you that if I was a juror and I thought that he was guilty of manslaughter and everyone else was saying not guilty, there's not a chance in the world anyone's talking me out of my opinion, unless it's with facts and everything else. I'm not going to get coerced or bullied into it. Partly from a selfish perspective, I feel I'm right, and I'll see on Nightline and Geraldo the next year as they're paying me to explain why the other jurors blew the decision, and I'm shocked that doesn't happen more often. I'm amazed in a high-profile case that people can get talked out of their opinions when they can hang a jury out to dry, and they're not, and they truly feel that they're correct.
It's a pressure situation, and it was 6 women, so women are
better at
they're a little
getting along.
Yeah, not with each other, but as a group. Women hold grudges, I swear to God. Steve and I could get in a fist fight today. Tomorrow we're high-fiving each other. Women.
We did get into a fist fight, coincidentally, with Scott a couple weeks ago.
One woman will say something, she doesn't look good in that dress, and all of a sudden they're enemies for the rest of their life.
I walk in, I say, I hate that shirt. Don't ever wear that again, Brian.
He says that to me every day.
Then the next
I go, buy me some more.
He wears the same damn shirt.
I said,
every
you're Steve
time.
Fezzik. You won the damn Hilton contest twice. Buy me some damn damn close.
Hasn't happened the last couple years, so times are not as good as they were. So
there you go.
Let's make it official. You know, the Detroit Lions, I am convinced the good times, they're a-coming. The good times, they're a-coming. The good times, they're coming to an end. No, Detroit's always going to be a bunch of losers, but I do think this is a great spot for the team. That, let's face it, Detroit did have a fine year the year before they signed Stafford. They've locked him up. If they can't muster up enough competence with double revenge against this Viking team that's due to regress to cover -3, it is going to be the longest of years in Detroit. Lions going up to 3.5. I agree with the move. Let's lay -3. Detroit Lions, Week 1 NFL, free play. We going to win this one?
We'll find out in a few weeks.
Win or push. Have them up 10, have the Vikings driving late. And they will go for 2. Stay with us at pregame.tv. We will be breaking down who is going to win the national championship in college football. I have the winner for you. Stay tuned.